Today, we're going to discuss the differences between psychopathy and sociopathy, psychopathic indifference, and Buddhistic non-attachment. So first, psychopathy versus sociopathy. The first thing I want to say is, what does it even matter which one they are? I highly advise you to run, but quietly. But for the sake of knowledge and self-protection, let's dive in. Number one, nature versus nurture. Psychopaths are born while sociopaths are made. A sociopath is a product of society and upbringing. Many psychopaths come from loving homes. Conscience. A psychopath is born without a conscience, and a sociopath has a conscience, however twisted. In a brain scan, the area where most people would develop a conscience is non-existent in the psychopathic brain. It is a birth defect, so to speak. This is not the case with sociopaths. Remorse. A psychopath has no remorse, no matter the circumstances, while a sociopath can feel remorse if his actions went against his code of conduct. For example, a sociopath may not feel any remorse over stealing from a major corporation, but feels remorseful if he steals from a fellow thief. Remorse is something we learn by way of punishment. Whatever we were punished for as children, it becomes a behavior that is remorse-worthy. If we are raised in a permissive environment where negative behavior is normal, we will not feel remorse. Conflicting upbringing causes people to be repulsed by those who are different. We adopt the ethical code instilled in us, and those who don't uphold it are considered either immoral or uptight. This is why there's a stark difference in different cultures. In some cultures, it's okay to lie and manipulate, and in others, it's completely unacceptable. The motivation. What drives a psychopath is pleasure, while a sociopath is driven by personal gain. Much like the narcissist, he will remove any obstacles in his way and eradicate any person in the way of his desires, whereas a psychopath may cause tremendous harm for no particular reason. Mental illness versus mood disorder. Cluster B personalities are marked by emotional dysregulation, while psychopaths barely have any. The sociopath is under the cluster B personality disorder. It's interchangeable with antisocial personality disorder. The psychopath is a mental disorder. They're almost exclusively driven by desire, anger, fear, and boredom. Those are psychopaths. It feels to me that the psychopath cannot do anything about his illness, whereas a sociopath can choose to be a better human being. In some instances, some people successfully were able to minimize somebody's psychopathy by directing them in the right direction. They don't stop being psychopaths, but they minimize the damage. Let's move on to psychopathic indifference versus Buddhist non-attachment. Since I was 12, I have been exploring the world of meditation and later observed a striking resemblance between a meditative state and a psychopathic disposition. Being emotionally blunted like a psychopath is painful, while being spiritually grounded is loving and serene. They mark both ends of the emotional spectrum of the same goal, that is the ability to observe without being influenced. When meditation became a trend, many people began to demonstrate indifference rather than non-attachment. There's a stark difference between not getting involved versus not giving a shit about anybody. Many friends can be lost due to this mix-up. Being grounded does not mean we stop holding space for others and offering support. The concept of self-love is often confused with selfishness. Narcissism flourished due to a misconception of the world of spirituality. Meditation isn't about sitting quietly, breathing in and out to soothing music while letting the world burn to the ground. The dark triad. In psychology, this refers to the existence of three traits in one individual: psychopathy, which is a mental illness; narcissism, a personality disorder; Machiavellianism, a personality trait of someone whose main motivation is to manipulate and exploit others for personal gain. This person sees people as a means to an end. Writing a psychopath. Here's a conversation I had with a psychopath once. I told him, they say a psychopath has a God complex. He said, it's not a complex. I have the power to take a life. So I told him, but you can't resurrect one. He can't even create a life. Empathizing with psychopaths is a great tool for our safety. Remember, empathizing with someone doesn't mean we exonerate them or allow them into our lives, or even feel sorry for them. You don't have to. Rather, we empathize to gain better understanding of them. We get to be a few steps ahead. We can't fight, prevent, or escape what we don't understand. If you know what to look for, you have a better chance at avoiding them altogether. Empathy will serve you well when you need to know how and when to get out of harm's way. It takes a special method to rescue yourself from a psychopath targeting you. So here are a few people that could greatly benefit from empathizing with psychopaths, and including detectives, and the best of them do use these methods. Victory is challenging when your enemy has nothing left to lose. Psychopaths are conniving and manipulative. I don't buy into the popular belief that they're all highly intelligent, although some of them are. Their intelligence is compromised by their inability to understand emotions or foresee consequences. It's very limited to their mind games, and many of them do play the system by withholding critical information. Measuring intelligence, people forget emotional intelligence, which is pretty lacking in those types. To get a psychopath to confess to murder, a seasoned detective needs to provoke his ego and not plead to their emotions and mercy. Sometimes it proves useful to just get out of their way. These talkers often trip themselves up due to their overestimation of themselves and the underestimation of others. They believe they can outsmart the most seasoned detectives. Fortunately for us, they're wrong. Their low EQ marks their downfall. When reprimanded, they lash out like children. A clever detective can be a few moves ahead, which earns him the psychopath's trust and respect. They will always trickle critical information, such as where they buried the bodies, but eventually the psychopath gets pressured when his manipulations are no longer effective. Human resources, these are other people that would benefit from empathizing with psychopaths or to understand them better. So when your job listing describes criteria for the ideal candidate fits the criteria of a psychopath, the candidate will seem like an asset until your company sinks into oblivion. The last thing you need is a psychopath within your company. They often know how to climb to the top fast, earn the trust of top management, trample on anyone in their way. And by the time they get to the CEO, they have already driven the company to bankruptcy and total ruin. The psychopath embodies all the characteristics needed for business, except for honesty and integrity. They have tunnel vision, focus on their goals, but not yours. Without honesty and loyalty, any other positive trait will be meaningless. Therapists. Like everyone else, a psychopath has a deep need to be seen and heard, but he will watch you closely to get under your skin. Psychopaths don't find any fault with themselves, so going to therapy is not on their list. Unless it's court-ordered, they may never see a therapist in their life. When they do go to therapy, they gain deeper insight into human behavior and vulnerabilities, and a few more tricks to hone in their manipulation techniques. It's a lot like narcissists. They just get ideas from the therapist. It may not be the best idea to send them to therapy unless it's solely for scientific research. It doesn't bode well to call out a psychopath or to offer a diagnosis. There's nothing to be gained from that and everything to lose. It's best to let them talk and keep your inferences to yourself. Otherwise, when you bring it to their attention, they will intentionally say things to prove you wrong, mind themselves as much as possible, and if they want to, they will target you personally in whatever way they see fit. They know how to play the system pretty well. Prison guards. As the Doors would say, there's a killer on the road. The audacity it took Ted Bundy to escape twice is beyond my comprehension. Once through the courthouse window, the second from his cell in a high-security prison. For his second escape, he lost a lot of weight to fit himself through the ceiling vent, crawled through the walls, and casually jumped down into the guard's apartment, took a jacket, and strolled out the door. He went on a killing spree that was so gruesome, he surpassed himself. When he was apprehended, he shared his escape story as a funny anecdote. There was police everywhere, and they asked civilians to join the hunt. When I encountered an old man with a rifle up in the mountains, as I was pretending to jog, I slowed down so he doesn't shoot me. He warned me against the loose serial killer. To look casual, I smiled and thanked him, then proceeded to pick flowers until he walked away. He kept staring for so long that by the time I got out of his sight, I had a genuine bouquet. That was Ted Bundy's account on his escape. And the prison guards were none the wiser. They couldn't imagine that he would actually manage to escape in this manner. They didn't suspect why he was losing so much weight. So maybe now they would see it coming with those types of killers. Nothing is beyond them. The emotional innocence of the psychopathic mind can generate some serious humor, though. And with that humor, they can also draw people in. Another person, it's very important to be aware of psychopathy as a romantic partner. He will charm his way into your heart and then try to eat it. That's to sum up any psychopath, whether it's man or woman, it's all the same. Although women can be a lot scarier as psychopaths. There will be a one-sided agreement. You will do as he or she says, or he or she will destroy you and your family. So for the sake of talking easily, I will refer to the psychopath as a man. This man will manufacture intensity to get you hooked and will keep everything you hold dear hostage. If you think you can so much as eat without his permission, there will be grave consequences. Should you choose to stay, know you will have to leave your basic human rights at the door and your future will be in his hands. You will look in the mirror and you won't find your soul. He takes it away too. And always remember, they respond to kindness and violence than they ever would to niceness, pleading, and visible fear. They are cowards, and sometimes you will have to go psycho on them. Don't try that though. It's a big risk I took. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. Empathy checkpoint. The only time he ever apologized was to the first person he had killed, and that was himself. The first murder victim is always the one pulling the trigger. Always. You cannot murder anyone with such pleasure unless you're dead inside. This is what it feels like to be a psychopath. Whether they commit murder or not, a psychopath is plagued by emptiness and boredom. A person with an abundant variety of emotions can be kept company by them. We often wish to take a much-needed break from our emotions. There's nothing to be envious of when it comes to psychopaths. The inability to feel a variety of emotions is a painful existence. The void in the soul is palpable. We experience emotions in technicolor, while psychopaths experience four dull, shallow emotions at best, and often not even simultaneously. We're all capable of being callous when we perceive a threat to our loved ones and our most pressing needs. It's not the same as being born without a conscience, but due to our intense moments of self-absorption and when our survival is on the line, we can become incapable of empathy. We can act in cold-hearted ways when cornered. Thoughtlessness can make temporary psychopaths of us. Of course, this is not the most accurate statement. We can be temporary sociopaths, but not psychopaths. It's a temporary loss of conscience. Extreme desperation will shut down our conscience pretty fast. We all can become evil. What sets us apart is our intention, our choices, and our thresholds. The simplest way to embody a psychopath is first by not thinking of them as such. See them as innocent children or animals in the wild with sole concern for survival. This is a good method for actors and writers, and also those who need to use empathy to understand them deeply so that we can protect ourselves and others, especially when it's a detective and they need crucial information or they need to hold them accountable and keep society safe from them. These methods are very, very important. An animal can surely be vicious when hunting and looks frightening as it devours its prey, but they have an innocence about them because they don't see it as an act of violence. The animal is simply surviving and being present in the moment. This is how the psychopath lives. If you look into the eyes of a scared dog on the street, or if you watch Animal Planet, a lot of the happenings in nature are pretty vicious. A lion is eating a deer, and it's so crazy, like the resemblance of these animals when they want to eat and survive with the psychopath. It's like you look in their eyes and there's nothing there. It's as if they are completely oblivious of your right to live and breathe and to have freedom to just be. It's a serious sickness, and if we don't look at it from their perspective, that's when we become most vulnerable to them and be exposed to their danger at a much greater it's a much greater risk. If you wanna demonize them and look the other way, we actually become more vulnerable. So it's very important to approach it with a wider perspective, so to speak. Here are some myths about psychopaths. High IQ. They're not necessarily intelligent or intellectual. I think the myth of their intelligence, I think it's the whole thing about them barely having any emotions makes them seem more intellectual and intelligent because they are not slowed down by natural human emotions. We can get pretty stupid by acting on impulse emotionally, or when we're in love with somebody, or when we're very hurt. We can get a bit irrational, and because they don't have that, they seem to be more intelligent than most of us, but it's actually not true because they don't have any emotional intelligence. They don't know. Of course, they do have like X-ray vision into our psyches and what we want and what we don't want and what we fear. There is that kind of intelligence in some of them. Some psychopaths don't have this ability, by the way, and these are probably the ones that get caught very fast or they don't amount to much. However, there is a certain ability to look into other people and size them up and then have the ability to manipulate them. And because they don't have this irrational behavior caused by the fluctuating emotions that a normal human being would have, They could come across as intelligent, but it's just kind of a mirage. Number two, they're all murderers and criminals. That's another myth. Most psychopaths don't commit murder. Many occupy high places. They're not stalled by emotions, again, which has been a requirement for success. They're willing to step over anybody and be cold-hearted in the name of business and country. We see that a lot, of course, right now because it's actually somehow tolerated. Number three, they are psychotic. Psychopaths are not psychotic. They know exactly what they're doing. Psychosis is the inability to differentiate between what is real and what is not. Psychopaths know exactly what they're doing. They're pragmatic thinkers. However, they cannot grasp the concept of right and wrong. You may think to yourself, someone must be crazy to cause this much harm or to commit a murder. In layman's terms, sure, we can call them crazy. But in the eyes of the law, they're not. This is why they go to prison rather than mental institutions. There is no fixing for them. Unless they invent a way to install a conscience, psychopaths will not be any different. To them, breaking a red light and killing someone is the same. Both are illegal. Morally, though, they don't care. Most of them don't commit murder, but they're all cunning and calculating, and they do leave a trail of destruction in their wake.